How did I get my job? Yeah, it was a mistake. No, I always had a passion for wanting my own business, and really the way I landed in my own companies was sad to say. My mum passed away, and I had one of those epiphanies going, life's short, and certainly wanted to ensure that rather than just continuing on a corporate career, I gave it a good hard crack. So back in 2005, I started my own business, and I've been on a journey ever since. Actually, if you want to go right back, as an 18-year-old, I actually had a tie company. I realised actually going to a school ball, my last year of school, that these $100 ties made of these English fabrics, it only cost $30 a metre, and you can make 7 ties. My little brain was turning over, and I was going, hang on, there's a business here, especially if they're retailing for 90. So I used to make ties and actually sell them door to door to businesses in Auckland back in the early 90s. Yeah, and I guess I get a taste for that. I ended up doing a degree and degrees and having a corporate career. And I guess in the back of my mind was all that that value add proposition of my own business. Ironically, I landed back on clothing, and my first real business that I started was 2XU, a high performance sports brand. So I guess clothing's a bit in the DNA too, because my mum and aunties and various people I'd grown up around seamstresses, and I could see the value add of clothing, so it was something I was exposed to. Yeah, well, in clothing you've got a development pathway. You've actually got to develop. In our case, we actually wanted to be uniquely performance focused. We wanted to blow the competition out of the water. We had very audacious goals. Yeah. So we actually spent probably a year just developing fabrics. So in the clothing industry, you can either go along, you can buy a roll of fabric off a big mill, or you can be a lot more focused on the performance qualities and actually say, hey, we want to change your fabric. We want it to be more denier graded so it has better moisture management, or we want it to have more power because it's being used for compression. So we, as you said, we had startup capital. We developed fabric first, and then we developed product. And often in startup, you've got to sell your first lot of clothing, and then sell it out of the back of the car, get some money, buy some more, and scale up from there. Yes. We had millions. I had a couple of $1 million of seed capital, so we were able to really go to town on the development pathway. Yes. But make no mistake, at some point, yes, the warehouse was full, and we had to sell it. Yeah, and nothing motivates you as a full warehouse. Started by going to other retail stores, going to the specialist sports stores that may be into run or triathlon, and saying, hey, we've got something pretty special here, this is what we've done. It's a hard slog because there's well-established international brands. So we actually did open our first store almost concurrently. And the reason we opened it is we actually wanted to show that you could sell this premium, slightly more expensive performance brand in Australia. Yeah. I was making a run top at the time, which was incredibly expensive. It was $80. Yeah. It was totally justifiable. Ultimately, I believe price point isn't so relevant as value for money. So if you have something that's a $40 run top and it's a good run top, and you've got an $80 run top, it doesn't mean that the 81's not value for money. It just has to have a lot more features to it. Yes. And so that was our motivator, is to explain why we had 4 fabrics in our run top and the way it was constructed, and actually show that we could sell it. So selling it in our own store motivated the retailers to go, oh, okay, and then so yeah, having your own performance location, your own hero shop, actually ended up driving some demand back at the wholesale. So it was good to have. Look, it's really important that you get the chicken and egg right, because if you go and create demand before you've got supply or distribution, you're wasting your money, because you're creating demand for competitors. So you've got to make sure you're ready to go, and once you're ready to go, I like grassroots. I like authenticity. I think if you're going to do sports apparel, you go and turn up at sports events, and you go and win your customer base one person at a time, with passion. And then those early adopters and advocates tell 10 friends. And I think that the model I've used in both 2XU and in Saint, although the communities are very different, I've got very clean, very lifestyle orientated sports people and bikers. And at the end of the day, they're still passionate about what they do. And whilst we, with biking communities, you turn up at some of the rallies, and and there's a culture of rock and roll and fun and freedom. But there's authenticity there as well. And I think getting involved authentically with communities is a great word of mouth thing. And of course, these days you can turbocharge it more than ever with social communities, by using social media tools. You can be a lot more directed in terms of your advertising. I mean, once upon a time, you'd put an advert in a magazine and hopefully people would see it. Whereas now I can go to Facebook and go, this is the profile of my customer, this is the geography I want to talk to them in, and target, and also decide within hours whether or not it's working or not, and change the profile. So your ability to target and generate demand is probably more focused than ever. And I think that's the exciting thing about, you know, the world that we live in today. Look, when I started, to be frank, it's 2005, it's not that long ago, I didn't have a website. I had a website for information. I didn't even have an e-commerce function on it because I felt that I didn't want to compete with my wholesalers. It was that whole stigma back then.
Yeah.
People in Australia weren't as readily buying on the online as they were, say, overseas. So certain markets like the UK had taken off, and people were quite comfortable buying clothing, you know, understanding that if they got the size wrong, they could always return it. I watched it accelerate. For us now, it's become our fastest growing channel. This brand, Saint, has exploded with the internet, and the internet's its biggest channel by a long way. And you're right, it's sort of like, it's ultimately become your most important store. Like, you know, everybody talks about flagships. Well, everybody's website's a flagship to begin with. And you've got to, you know, consider the fact that people are going to make a judgment pretty quickly on what you're like as a brand based on your website. And then, of course, you know, as you present yourself in stores, and you might have shop-in-shop concepts, or you have your own locations, they've got to be congruent too. And it's an ongoing challenge because that landscape's changing so quickly. You know, you've got massive players like Amazon, and there's spy bots running around the world, you know, aggregating prices to the lowest price point. It's interesting, complex, but exciting, you know, and certainly is, I don't think there's any business these days that wouldn't probably focus on their e-commerce platform as the most important channel. Yeah. So it's obviously 13 years down the track. We've had 2 equity events along the way. In 2011, a local equity company, Lazard, was actually run by a local entrepreneur, and it's licensed out of New York. They bought into our business, bought 30%, and that was nice to have a little bit of capital to do some more stores and to grow faster.
Yes.
And also to take a little bit of money off the table because it had been a big sacrifice before that.
Yes.
And then quite surprisingly, within a couple of years, Louis Vuitton's capital arm, El Capital, had actually been down in Australia buying a share in R.M. Williams.
Yes.
And wondered what all those tights with the X on were running around the tan. And quite literally discovered the brand and discovered our story and bought in 40%.
Yep.
So that was at a significant valuation, and it was a big, you know, it was a big event. And now over the last 3 or 4 years, we've tried to scale up, you know, bring in corporate CEOs, and the challenge is always ensuring you still act like a small business, you still act like an underdog as you scale up for bigger aspirations. You know, and that's come with some challenges, but at the end of the day, you know, our product's still sensational. We still have an incredible uptake at the sort of Olympic and world champion level. Yes. We're very much a premium brand, and we used to say, well, you know, we're by athletes for athletes, but you know, in places like Oslo and Melbourne, it's managed to trickle down and it's become athleisure, you know, and there's mums hopping out of Range Rovers with their 2XU pants on. They might not be world champions, but they want quality, and you know, they've come to the brand. So in some elements, it's become almost, you know, household. In many countries in the world, it's still actually very much a performance brand. You know, in America, the NBA teams all buy it because we can't sponsor them. The NFL, most of the NFL teams buy it. We sell to the Navy SEALs, like it's very elite. And a lot of people don't know about it, but the opportunity obviously is to do what we've done in places like Melbourne. Yeah, look, it's ironically, when we launched, we were seen as a very masculine brand. You know, it was a very black and white. Yeah, me too now. But you know, and I think the guys that really rationalise the performance elements of products and so forth really loved it. And but as we've progressed, because the product is so powerful, it does some amazing things physiologically in terms of the compression, but it's also very flattering, and because, you know, all our tights have got a lot of black in them, I think, you know, it's been quite fascinating how it's been adopted by fashion. I mean, I've seen people walking down the street with a fashion top and a pair of heels on my compression tights, and I'm like, didn't expect that, but I'll take the sale. I'd sort of pulled back a little bit from 2XU in terms of taking a breather. Was non-executive for a year and decided to try and lose some weight because all these time on planes and eating meals. So I went off and trained for a while and rode my bikes and things. And I was riding my bike one day with my co-founder, and we were sort of commenting on, it was a hot Melbourne day. You know, the tarmac was sticky, it was so hot, and we actually thought, hey, hang on, we've actually got an opportunity here, potentially to create something that isn't a leather, that is safe, that could be nice in a hot environment. So we sort of had a couple of beers afterwards, and we had a chat about what we could do, and that really led to the idea of Saint, which was, can we create a single layer safety product? It wasn't necessarily denim. We were happy to go and look at the marketplace and look at all the different yarns and opportunity.
Yes.
And we came across some people doing products that weren't quite at a CE level. The CE is a 4-second rating sliding down the road. And so what we decided to do was experiment more R&D, change the structure of the yarns. And it really, you know, it sounded simple. Let's make a single layer safety product. That safety denim ended up costing us a couple of $1 million in a couple of years. Wow. But we ended up with a proprietary fabric, which the first one was 3.67 seconds of slide time. So we didn't quite nail the 4 seconds.
When you say slide time, what do you mean?
Sorry. Well, the way they test a motorcycle garment is its ability to slide down the road if you come off the bike.
Yes.
So if things go random and you've come off on a corner or whatever, as you're sliding along the tarmac, the first thing you don't want to do is actually have your material rip, because then you lose skin.
Yes.
And whilst bruises and broken bones heal quite quickly, skin grafts are forever. So most people wear leathers, and leathers are very tough. So there's a testing facility up in Europe, and many of them, and they'll literally have a spinning disc, which is like coarse sandpaper. They've got a ram that comes down under a certain amount of pressure, and it replicates sliding on tarmac, and you've got to have your fabric last for 4 seconds before it rips.
Yes.
Actually count out 4 seconds of sliding down the road. It's a long time. But if you're traveling fast, you'll do it. Our first fabric was 3.67 seconds before it ripped. Almost there, really exciting. Like, nobody expected a single layer to do that. But then we kept on persevering and changing the weave structures and so forth. We've now got fabrics. This fabric here can slide down the road for 5.9 seconds before it rips. Yeah, wow. And we've gone so far as convinced stuntmen to be dragged behind motorbikes, and we've got some videos we can show you. And we did 6 passes of about 30 meters at 65 kilometers an hour before it ripped, you know, in real world testing ourselves. So it's pretty exciting, and we've had, unfortunately, a lot of our customers have come off over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've had a lot of real world examples where they say, yeah, you saved my life. I slid down the 405 in LA and my pants didn't rip, and you know, and even when the paramedics came to check on me, they wanted to cut them off, you know, they could hardly cut them with the scissors. It's like, yeah, we know. Yeah. So yeah, very exciting. So that was the development pathway on fabric, and obviously by creating that proprietary fabric, it then set us up to head into workwear, into other tough lifestyle you know, applications. Yes. And that's where we're pretty excited today, because there's a lot of opportunity. Well, make no mistake, if it doesn't look good, people won't buy it. Of course. So the fact our tights are flattering, or the fact that some of the Saint stuff looks pretty cool and timeless, yes, is very thoughtful. But I don't market on that platform. I market on a platform of performance. Yes. And so you're absolutely right. Whilst the customers and the culture is either end of the spectrum, we've got rock and roll and tattoos, and we've got healthy athletes. At the end of the day, the formula is the same, and that is to focus on the performance difference of the fabric and the product, and talk about that, because I feel that creates clear airspace. You know, when I started 2XU, a lot of the sports brands were showing DJs in their clothing. I wanted to talk about being a performance brand and focusing on performance language, and that was, at the time, very clear airspace. And once again, rather than being another sort of fashion brand inspired by motorcycles, yes, I want to be authentically a protective motorcycle brand with tough products that happen to look good. And so, like I said, make no mistake, I do have very clever people making sure the design's good, but I don't say buy this jacket because it's cool. I say buy it because it's going to protect you. I honestly, look, if you've got the passion and the tenacity and the resilience to do something, and you believe in yourself, then that's a great place to start. When it comes to something like clothing, I would say make sure that you focus on quality. You know, like, at the end of the day, cheap fashion's too hard a place to play because it's not unique enough. So if you've got a design, you know, skill, fantastic. You know, if you can do something unique, that's fantastic. If there's a marketplace demand that you're aware of that's not being catered to, I always try to find a unique space, because if you can find a unique selling proposition, you got you got more chance of selling, right?
Yeah.
You know, bring ambassadors along on the journey. Make sure you get every friend and family member and everyone you can get into your community on board, because you need to create a movement. You need to create people talking about things. I would, you know, the tough thing about clothing is the scalability of it. Like, when you're small, you can't negotiate good prices, so you've got to be very careful. You've also got to be careful with buying too much stock. The biggest mistake I always see is somebody goes, wow, I've created an amazing hypercolor t-shirt and I'm going to buy 10,000 of them and sell them all. And then, you know, 2 years later, they've got 9,900 of them and they've got to dump them. I would scale up. I would pay a little bit more and make 50 units and sell them, and especially if you don't have capital, and scale yourself up, because one of the things that catches a lot of clothing brands out is stock and the aging stock, because, you know, unlike, you know, my mate who has a whiskey business, his aging stock's a good problem. Every year it's worth more. Clothing's not like that. Yeah. Clothing's every season it's worth less. So you know, that would definitely be some advice I'd have. And, you know, and I think that, you know, one of the things too is don't necessarily reinvent the wheel. Like sometimes there's a lot of things you can do. You know, if for instance you think you've got to create all these new blocks, go and find the best fitting block in your industry. If you happen to, I don't know, you're going to do dance and there's a fantastic dance brand and they've got a great block, start with that. Obviously do your embellishments, but a lot of people want to start things from scratch, and that's going to take a huge amount of time and money. But it's a tough game, and the main thing I can say in all of it is just believe in yourself and be resilient. Keep pushing. You know, it's tough getting off the ground, and it's that first couple of years of getting yourself to that break even that's the toughest. So set yourself up for success by realising just how big the task is to begin with. Look, both brands, I mean, Saint's exciting because it's a rocket ship about to take off. We're seeing phenomenal growth in our workwear. We've got a tough product that's 5 times tougher than standard workwear, and builders and labourers and everyone's coming across it, and it's selling really, really well. We're already getting inquiry into the sort of fashion world of street fashion, where skateboarders and BMXers are going, wow, that looks cool, but I'm not going to rip when it come off it. So, you know, Saint is super exciting, and it has a massive opportunity, motorcycle as well. And 2XU, whilst it has some isolated success where it does incredibly well in pockets around the world, it still hasn't become a global brand. So just seeing people discover the product and love the product is exciting. So although they're at different stages, they're still very much in growth mode. And I'd love to see them continue to make great product and have more people in them. You know, like, I don't focus on the sales numbers. Yes. I focus on the communities that are in it. And when I see a marketplace where we don't have momentum, I see a massive opportunity. Yeah. Look, at the moment, I'm definitely spending a lot more time at 2XU because there's some real opportunity to reset the business. And yes. But yeah, I've sort of in the last couple of years, I've sort of pretty much drifted between the two, and it's usually days of the week. Yep. You sort of block meetings together, so you can obviously get a lot done in one business. Yes. Luckily, the businesses aren't too far apart. They're both here in Melbourne. Yep. And of course, email being what it is, you can be working on 2 inboxes at any time. So, look, and to be frank, you know, a lot of the challenges, a lot of the people challenges, the customer challenges, they're all the same. So it's kind of quite interchangeable. I do have to check myself sometimes if I'm talking about Saint, I say 2XU and vice versa. But yeah. Websites, we said it before. If you want to see the videos, and I think social media and websites is probably where you can start and educate yourself on both brands.